If you have ever left a normal conversation feeling strangely tired, if a busy room can make your mind feel crowded, if someone's tone stays with you long after their words are over, this may feel deeply familiar. You may have spent years wondering why certain things affect you so strongly when other people seem to brush them off. And if that is true, I want to begin here. Sensitivity is not weakness. For some people, it may simply mean that the mind and body take in more emotional and sensory detail and process it more deeply. This is not a diagnosis. It is not a label meant to box you in. It is simply a gentle way to understand an experience that many highly sensitive people quietly live with every day. From the outside, they may look calm, capable, even easygoing. But inside, there is often much more being noticed, much more being felt, and much more being processed than anyone else can see. Some highly sensitive people are not just reacting more. They may be perceiving more. The flicker in someone's expression, the tension underneath a joke, the brightness of a store, the hum of a refrigerator at night, the emotional residue of a difficult meeting hours later. Small things do not always stay small when your system picks up details with such intensity. And because this happens so automatically, many sensitive people grow up assuming they are the problem, when in reality, they may simply be experiencing more inputs at once. The first thing highly sensitive people often secretly experience is overstimulation that looks invisible from the outside. It may happen in places other people call normal: a crowded supermarket with harsh lighting, carts squeaking, children crying, announcements overhead, a stranger standing a little too close, a family gathering with overlapping conversations, background music, strong perfume, and subtle emotional tensions in the room. A workday filled with notifications, quick questions, small talk, and the pressure to respond before you have fully processed what is being asked. To someone else, this might seem manageable. To a sensitive person, it can feel like trying to hold 10 radio stations in the mind at once. The nervous system may not be weak. It may simply be working hard to sort, filter, and make sense of everything entering at the same time. That is why you may come home from an ordinary day and feel completely depleted, even when nothing dramatic happened. Here is the part most people misunderstand. Overstimulation is not always about being unable to cope with life. Sometimes it is about how much you were coping with all at once. The effort was real, even if it was invisible. The fatigue makes more sense when you stop measuring your day only by what happened on the surface, and start considering how much your system had to process underneath it. A practical reframe can help here. Instead of asking, "Why am I so tired when I did so little?" you may ask, "What was my mind and body taking in all day?" That question is softer, more honest, and often much more accurate. It can also change the way you care for yourself. You may need fewer inputs, more pauses, lower volume, softer transitions, or a little quiet before and after demanding environments. Not because you are fragile, but because your system may work best with room to recover. The second thing many highly sensitive people secretly experience is absorbing the emotional atmosphere around them. You walk into a room and sense that something is off before anyone says a word. A friend says, "I'm fine," but your chest tightens because their smile does not match their eyes. A partner comes home distracted, and even if they say nothing is wrong, the entire mood of the evening feels different. Some sensitive people notice emotional undercurrents so quickly that they start adjusting themselves before they even realize they are doing it. This can make you seem thoughtful and empathetic. It can also make everyday life quietly exhausting. When you notice tension, sadness, irritation, disappointment, or distance in other people, your own body may respond as if it needs to manage the atmosphere. You may become more careful, more alert, more eager to smooth things over. Over time, this can create a habit of carrying feelings that did not begin with you. This is why it can feel so confusing. You may leave an interaction unsure which emotions were actually yours. Were you anxious because you were anxious, or because the other person was? Were you upset about your own day, Or did you pick up the heaviness in the office? The strain in a conversation? The restlessness in the room? When you are highly attuned, emotional boundaries can blur without you meaning for them to. A helpful reframe is to remember that noticing someone's emotional state does not mean you are responsible for regulating it. Empathy is not the same as duty. Care is not the same as emotional abandonment. Boundaries help preserve emotional availability. In fact, some of the kindest people need the clearest boundaries, because without them, compassion can quietly turn into depletion. That may look like pausing before immediately comforting someone, asking yourself what actually belongs to you, or reminding yourself, I can care without carrying all of this. It may mean stepping outside after a heavy conversation, sitting in your car for 5 extra minutes before going inside, or taking a slow walk around the block to let your own emotional weather settle again. The third thing highly sensitive people secretly experience is replaying moments long after other people have moved on. A brief awkward exchange at work. A text message that felt slightly colder than usual. The memory of a joke that landed wrong. The look on someone's face when you said no. For some sensitive people, these moments do not pass quickly. They echo. The mind keeps turning them over, searching for meaning, checking for harm, trying to understand every detail. From the outside, this can be mistaken for overthinking. And sometimes it is. But often there is something more tender underneath it. Some sensitive people process experiences deeply because details stay vivid in the system. What another person forgets in 10 minutes may remain emotionally active for hours or even days. Not because you enjoy dwelling, but because your mind may keep working on what feels unfinished. The quiet truth is that this kind of deep processing often comes from a wish to be careful, connected, and sincere. You may not want to hurt people. You may not want to be misunderstood. You may value emotional honesty so much that even small relational shifts feel important. That does not make you broken. It means your inner world may place significance on nuances that others ignore. Still, this habit can become draining when every moment gets treated like a problem to solve. One gentle practice is to ask, is this moment asking for reflection, or am I trying to find certainty where none exists? That question can interrupt the loop. Sometimes there is something useful to learn. Other times, your mind may simply be trying to protect you by reviewing the scene again and again, hoping to prevent future pain. When that happens, it can help to give the mind an endpoint. You might write the moment down. Name what you think happened. Name what you cannot know. And then say to yourself, I have thought about this enough for tonight. You do not always need complete certainty in order to rest. The fourth thing many highly sensitive people secretly experience is feeling guilty for needing space. You may love people deeply and still need long stretches of quiet after being with them. You may enjoy meaningful connection and still feel an almost physical pull toward solitude after socializing, working, caregiving, or even spending time with people you care about. And because the world often treats constant availability as love, some sensitive people start to feel ashamed of this need. And this is where many sensitive people blame themselves. They assume that needing alone time means they are distant, difficult, antisocial, or secretly rejecting other people. But alone time can be recovery, not rejection. It can be the way a sensitive system returns to balance. Just as some people recover through activity and noise, others recover through silence, slower pacing, and the absence of social demand. Think of the ordinary scenes where this shows up. You come home after dinner with friends and sit in the dark for a few minutes before doing anything else. You cancel a weekend plan, not because you do not care, but because your mind already feels full. You ignore your phone for an evening because even kind messages can feel like one more thing landing on an already crowded inner space. None of this necessarily means there is something wrong with your relationships. It may simply mean your system needs room to reset. A compassionate reframe is this: wanting space does not erase love. It may protect it. When you honor your need for recovery, you may return to people with more steadiness, patience, and presence. Without that space, resentment and exhaustion can quietly replace genuine connection. Boundaries help preserve emotional availability, and solitude is often one of those boundaries. The fifth thing highly sensitive people secretly experience is struggling with harshness more than others seem to. This may include sharp criticism, aggressive humor, dismissive tones, conflict, heavy environments, or people who treat emotional roughness as normal communication. Even when you understand that someone is stressed, joking, or not intending deep harm, your body may still react strongly to the energy of it. A boss says, "I need this fixed now," and your system hears urgency long after the conversation ends. A friend teases you in front of others, and while everyone laughs, something in you closes. A family member uses a sarcastic tone, and even if you know their habits, your body still tightens before your mind can explain it away. Some sensitive people are not only hearing words, they are registering force, pace, tension, and emotional temperature. Here is the part most people misunderstand. Being affected by harshness does not mean you are too sensitive in the trivial, dismissive way people often use that phrase. It may mean your system is highly responsive to emotional impact. You may notice more than what was said. You may notice how it was said, what it implied, what it stirred in your body, and what it reminded you of. This does not mean life must always be soft in order for you to function. It means it is wise to know which environments keep your system braced all the time. Some sensitive people slowly adapt to roughness by becoming numb, silencing, or chronically tense. But adaptation is not always the same as well. Being a practical reframe is to stop asking whether you should be affected and start asking, what kind of communication helps you stay open and grounded? That may lead you to speak more directly about tone, spend less time with people who confuse harshness with honesty, or build a life with more relationships where calmness is not seen as weakness. The sixth thing many highly sensitive people secretly experience is a deep fear of disappointing others, even in small ways, saying no to an invitation, taking longer to reply, needing rest when someone wants more from you, changing your mind, asking for gentleness, telling the truth when the truth may not be what the other person hoped to hear. For some sensitive people, these moments can feel much heavier than they look. That is often because disappointment is not just registered as a simple social event. It may feel like a disruption in connection, and connection matters deeply. So instead of honoring your limits, you may over-explain, delay, soften, promise too much, or say yes while your whole body says no. Then later, when the exhaustion sets in, you may wonder why life feels so emotionally expensive. This is why it can feel so confusing. You may think your problem is that you care too much, but often the real issue is that you have not been taught how to let people have their feelings without making those feelings a verdict on your worth. Someone can be disappointed and still respect you. Someone can wish for more from you and still love you. Someone can misunderstand your boundary and still survive it. This is one of the quiet turning points for many sensitive people. The moment you realize that being kind does not require endless accommodation. The moment you see that every yes given against your own capacity becomes a hidden no to your peace. The moment you understand that boundaries are not walls against love. They are structures that keep love honest and sustainable. If this is difficult, start small. Practice shorter explanations. Instead of building a careful speech to make sure no one feels anything uncomfortable, try a respectful truth. I can't make it tonight. I need a quiet evening. I'm not available for that. I need some time before I respond. Simple language can feel unnatural at first, especially if you are used to managing everyone else's comfort. But over time, it can become a form of self-respect. The seventh thing highly sensitive people secretly experience is loneliness in places where they are not physically alone. You may be with friends, at work, in a relationship, at a family table, and still feel unseen. Not because no one loves you, but because the depth of your inner experience is hard to translate. You may notice things you do not know how to explain without sounding dramatic. You may need kinds of rest, communication, or tenderness that other people do not automatically understand. So you adapt. You smile when you are overstimulated. You say you are just tired when you are emotionally flooded. You tell yourself not to make a big deal out of what affected you. You become easy to be around by editing how much of your real experience gets shown. And slowly, a private loneliness can form. The loneliness of being surrounded, but not fully recognized. The quiet truth is that many sensitive people are not asking for special treatment. They are asking for accurate understanding. They want room to say, "This affects me more deeply than it seems to affect other people," without being dismissed. They want relationships where silence is not awkward, where slower processing is allowed, where needing a pause is not treated like indifference, and where emotional nuance is not brushed aside. If this part touches something tender in you, it may help to remember that being less visible is not the same as being less real. Your needs do not become invalid just because they are subtle. Your inner life does not become excessive just because it is difficult to explain. And your sensitivity does not have to be performed loudly in order to deserve care. And this is where many sensitive people blame themselves once again. They assume that if they feel lonely, they must be asking for too much. But often, they may simply be asking in the wrong places, or not yet asking clearly enough. Not everyone will understand this part of you. But the people who matter can learn, especially when you stop hiding your experience behind constant self-minimizing. Across all 7 of these experiences, there is a pattern worth noticing. Highly sensitive people may not just feel more. Some may process more sensory detail, more emotional tone, more layers of meaning, more after effects, more inner reverberation. And when you live this way in a fast, noisy, emotionally blunt world, it can be easy to think your sensitivity is the obstacle. But sensitivity is not weakness. In the right conditions, it can become discernment, empathy, creativity, depth, intuition, and care. The challenge is not to harden yourself into someone you are not. The challenge is to understand your own wiring with enough honesty that you stop fighting your nature and start supporting it wisely. That support may look simple from the outside, more quiet before and after demanding plans, less exposure to people who leave your body tense, more permission to leave a room before you are completely overwhelmed, more thoughtful routines, more honest language, more boundaries around time, noise, urgency, and emotional labor. These are not indulgences. For some highly sensitive people, they can be forms of stability. This is not a diagnosis. It is simply one way to make sense of an experience that often goes unnamed. If you have spent years feeling out of step with a world that seems less affected, less porous, less easily overwhelmed, it may be a relief to realize that your experience has a pattern, not a flaw, a pattern. And once you can see that pattern, you may begin to meet yourself with less shame. You may stop forcing yourself to call exhaustion laziness, overstimulation weakness, solitude selfishness, or boundaries coldness. You may start to notice that what you need is not always less feeling, but better ways to care for the life that feeling creates. So if any part of this felt like your private reality finally being spoken out loud, let that recognition be gentle. You do not have to prove your sensitivity, defend every need, or explain every limit perfectly. You may simply begin by trusting what your inner life has been telling you for a long time, that your experience is real, that your needs matter, and that a softer way of living may not be avoidance at all, but wisdom. If you want to carry one thing with you, let it be this. Some highly sensitive people are not failing at life. They may simply be navigating life with a system that notices and processes more. That difference can be challenging, but it can also be meaningful when it is understood with kindness. And if you feel comfortable, tell me in the comments what drains you that other people do not seem to understand. Your answer may help someone else feel less alone.